In this episode of Roll Off Rundowns, we've invited Keystone Waste Solutions and RolliSkate to talk to us about dumpster rental equipment. We're covering trucks, trailers, dumpsters, and everything in between. Whether you're just starting out or you're looking to grow from hundreds to thousands of dumpsters, this episode has something for you. Let's jump in. All right, well, let's start by covering the basics. So, Bram, I'd love to ask you, what are the different kinds of trucks and trailers that a dumpster rental business uses?
If you look at that from a high level, you've really got two different styles of hoist/trailers. You've got a hook lift style, and then you've got a cable style. So obviously two different apparatuses and the way they pick up containers, advantages, disadvantages of both. And then the other main contributor to that is under CDL versus CDL. And once you move it away from trailers, right? In trailers, there's many different options, and trailers from 14,000 GVW under CDL all the way to 26,000. There is both hook and cable. Most the hooks today in the trailer world are manufactured. The main manufacturers in Canada, but there's a new announcement coming out from a domestic supplier that there'll be another hook lift trailer on the market here soon. Then you move into trucks, it gets a little more complicated. Again, under CDL versus CDL, hook versus cable, and then you've got different classes in your trucks. So as an example, an F500 is a 19,500 GVW truck under CDL, and it's designed for a 10 to 12 foot container, and typically a 12 to 16,000 pound capacity hoist. Then you move up a notch and you get a 22,000 class 6 truck. So 10 to 14 foot containers, 16,000 pound hoist is pretty common on that. And then the next class, again, still under CDL, you move into like a Freightliner M2. It's a 25.9 GVW. Which is a class 6 truck, again, still under CDL. And that is the break point of CDL. So once you go over 26,000 GVW, now you're in a CDL category. So if you think about the CDL categories, most common in the industry, you've got a 33,000, which is just over CDL, but it does allow you a lot more capacity than the under CDL. And typically, you'd put a 30,000 pound hoist on that top chassis. And then as we all see going down the road in the industry, the big 20, 30, 40 yard carriers are the bigger trucks. They're class 8. They're designed to haul 20 to 22 foot containers. They make up a majority of the industry, and they're a 56,000 to a 66,000 GVW truck. So again, wide variety of options from small under CDL to the big CDL. In the truck category, trailers also a lot of options, and then you've got the hook lift and cable world.
Great, thank you for that, Bram. And so we talked about trucks, but now let's switch over to you need dumpsters. Jeff, what are the common size dumpsters that haulers typically rent?
Well, that's a good question. I can only talk about my experiences, what I know. Bram is definitely a little bit more in tune with that because he sells these dumpsters to all sorts of different types of haulers. But it seems like everyone wants to get to the 20-yard size, and that kind of takes care of the non-CDL trucks as well as going into the CDL trucks. So I think the guys that are running the smaller trucks aspire to get to the 20s. That'll hold them there for a little bit until they want to bump up into a heavier chassis. And I went through the whole gamut of that as a hauler as well, starting with a smaller non-CDL vehicle all the way up to now I'm pushing 72,000 pound trucks with triaxles. So, been there, done that.
For the hauler that's starting out with limited capital, what types of equipment would provide the best balance between cost and functionality? And I'll direct that towards you, Bram.
Yeah. So, to answer that, I'd say what's your starting point and what's your goals, right? That's really a consideration. And then what's your overall business plan? I think it's important also, as we're talking about entry points, to consider what's your end game. As JC said, he started out in the small stuff, quickly learned he's got to go big. So all that's a consideration when you're talking about it. Obviously, the lowest entry point is if I own a 3/4 ton pickup, a 1 ton pickup, I can go out, procure a small roll-off trailer, some 15, 20-yard cans, as JC alluded to. Then I don't have the investment of the truck side. On that same subject, I'd say if I don't have a 3/4 ton or 1 ton pickup, say I'm a 1/2 ton pickup guy, right? Well, by the time I go out and purchase a truck and a trailer, I'm probably getting pretty close to just buying an under CDL truck with a hoist up fitted on it. So again, what I'd say is the smaller equipment, obviously the more affordable it is, but I'll also say it ties you into a smaller market, smaller percentage of the roll-off market, and you'll learn quickly to go the best route you can from the start. But again, with the consideration of affordability and where you are today and what you're in game.
I like that you mentioned goals, because I think that's a big one. A lot of folks, they may be doing this as a weekend warrior, but lots of folks want to get into this to be a serious business that they want to grow. And capital is not always the easiest thing. So, you guys at Keystone, I'm sure you have programs, but can you speak to if you're getting into this, are there leasing or financing typically available? And especially for those that might be starting out, have, lower credit or limited financial history.
Yeah, and we've partnered with several different finance and lease companies. Everybody's a little different. Some require two years in business, but we do have partners both on the lease side and the finance side that will finance a guy based upon personal credit. So if I'm trying to start a business, that's important, right? And I've got good credit, I can go in and start my business, use my personal credit. We've also got other lenders that will, just secure the assets and lean against the assets. So again, we try to keep a close working relationships kind of with the whole gamut in the finance and lease. We've got several options. And there's several options in the market outside of those that we partner with. But the most important thing is to shop it, to make sure you understand it. Rates are expensive, and there is more aggressive type lenders out there that will offer a lower interest rate, even in a startup type situation.
So what I heard there is, if your credit score is 320, you should probably just keep doing what you're doing and not get into business.
Yeah, or figure a way to cash flow it, right, and get that credit started.
So let's talk about, some common mistakes that haulers make when they're starting out. And Jeff, not that you've ever made any, but could you share maybe some things you've seen, or maybe some things that you've done? Like, what are the common mistakes when choosing equipment specifically?
Wow. Well, I've done it as a hauler. My history is that I ran in 2002. I think I started running roll-offs, and I was one of the first guys that bought a switch and go setup, which is a non-standard rail proprietary setup. That allowed me to dabble in the roll-off industry and take my business to a whole nother level from where it was. So that whole switch was a big financial burden, from switching from a non-standard rail to a standard rail and then into a hook. So that was a large capital investment. And it kind of sets you back for a minute, because you got to find out where you're going to get the money from. If your credit's great, you can lean on a leasing partner or a financing partner. And so picking the right equipment, going back to picking the right equipment, is knowing your growth, knowing what you want to do, where you want to end up.
Would that be a common mistake? Could be that if you didn't have a business plan that looked towards the future, you started out with equipment that didn't scale. Is that fair to say?
Yes. And I think that's the industry. I think that's a lot of the industry right now, that you've got to plan for your future.
Yeah, so we all don't have crystal balls, and so sometimes you can't avoid that. But having, maybe reassessing your business plan as well as time goes along. Okay, are we purchasing something that lets us scale, or are we purchasing something that is going to lock us in a certain area, and we have to purchase something else? And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's part of your plan. But what's really cool about this industry is, people think like, well, how much innovation could there be? We're talking about trucks and dumpsters here. But there's some cool stuff, and your company does make one of those cool things. So can you tell us what is RolliSkate, and how do you help haulers?
Thank you. Since I am a hauler, we ran into some situations years ago that we tried to make a better widget. And in this case in point, it was underlayment. We tried to make a better underlayment so our customers felt comfortable in us leaving these dumpsters that they were going to add weight into that. So the dumpster by rights, some people say it won't do damage, and some people will say it will do damage, but definitely by the time you put items in there, things change dramatically. And we definitely didn't want to be on that tail end of, we wanted to mitigate property damage. We're not really into litigation. We don't want any of that. So we decided that we came up with this product, RolliSkate. It's dumpster underlayment. And then we opened it up to the public. After we were using it and beta testing it, we opened it up to the public about 4 or 5 years ago. And haulers nationally love the product. Some are still skeptical, but for the ones that love it, they love it, and they're not going back.
That's awesome. I know it's a popular product, and I know I've heard haulers talk about it. So congrats on developing that. And so when it comes to dumpsters, Bram, is it more cost effective to go with like a limited offering of dumpsters, or should a business consider specializing design or for like niche markets?
Well, again, I'll go back to the importance of a business plan and understanding what market you're trying to serve. So in the general, what I'll do is generalize the roll-off market. And you're just in roll-offs. I'd say the more options you provide, let's say 10 yard, 11 yard, 13 yard, 15 yard, 18 yard, it gets pretty complex. And you have to look at your business from a logistics company, and every mile you drive is time and cost. So I'll go back to a guy that I worked with getting in business back in '93. He's now running 1,600 containers. His motto is I offer a 15 yard and a 30 yard. The 15 yards for the residential, smaller customer, maybe the garage clean out, the remodeler. The 30 yards are for the contract commercial type accounts. He's been very successful in that and believes the logistics are the biggest part of his cost basis. And again, that model's been very successful for him. That doesn't mean it can fit all markets, but I would say the less complexity in product variation you have, the more efficient your logistics will be. Now, I will also say that there is other markets, right? So, Keystone's developed a skid that could put you in the porta potty business per se. There's a concrete washout container. There's concrete breakout opportunities out there. There's flatbed opportunities where you could actually haul materials for different companies with your same roll-off truck. So there's lots of opportunities outside of the standard roll-off. But when you talk about the standard roll-off industry, I would say the fewer options that you have to offer in your market, the lower your cost basis is going to be.
When someone goes from, a hauler starts out and maybe they're starting with their 1 ton in a trailer setup, and their business starts growing, they start buying more dumpsters. And at a certain point, you want to think about the considerations from moving from that trailer to a truck, or from one truck to a fleet. Jeff, like you've experienced this, and would love to hear Bram's feedback as well after you go. But what are some considerations that haulers should take when taking that step?
Well, we're in the midst of it again with our trucks. The trucks that we used to have, that we usually get rid of trucks every 2 to 3 years. So all of our trucks are new and people are excited to get them when we're done with them. But what we're doing now is that we're reducing our fleet. And what Bram said earlier, less is more. We've got rid of the 10s and 15 yarders, and now we're only offering 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that's primarily because they fit on that chassis. We can stretch a 15 on our chassis, but it just doesn't work in that combination of what we're trying to do. It's not long enough for proper dump angles and releasing the loads and things of that nature. So we definitely have moved from certain chassis to the next chassis. And, currently our trucks can run 20s, 30s, and 40s. And the residentials, they say, hey, can we get the smallest size? Well, our smallest size is 20 at this point in time. So, but the good thing is that we charge out like it's a 15. So we have a competitive edge against all the guys that are only offering 15 yarders, because we're offering a 20 yarder. They're getting better value for the money spent.
Bram, what about you from your former hauling life? What advice would you give if someone's going from that, I want to grow my fleet, or I want to grow into bigger trucks?
Well, I'll go back and emphasize first, right? That's a consideration you need to make when you're getting in the business, to make sure you're in the right piece of equipment to allow growth. But say I'm a trailer and 10 can guys, and I'm ready to make the next move, right? So I've got a few considerations. One is, where do I go? Do I go to the over CDL? Do I stay in under CDL? Really, the other consideration that you really have to put a lot of research into is insurance cost. I think insurance cost is really a dynamic that a lot of people entering the industry do not think about. Again, truck and trailer to a dedicated truck with a hoist system. My understanding is that changes insurance costs quite a bit. And then the capital cost, right, of the next piece of equipment. Trucks, obviously, with a truck with a body on it is going to be more expensive than going out and purchasing another trailer to increase my fleet. If I've got a 3/4 ton pickup or 1 ton pickup available. So again, I just think it's important in the get-go to think about that next move. And then as you get there, do your research, insurance, really what's my local market? And I'll also throw in, it's important as you're moving in to think about that growth, but as you go into the roll-off industry, typically you're going to be a 1 truck or 1 trailer operation starting out. Okay. So it's important to look at your local market, establish some relationships with some guys, some what some would consider competitors, right? Align your equipment with theirs, establish a relationship. So maybe as you're growing and you feel that pain point, man, don't really need to get in another truck, you can partner with another business that's local to you. Y'all can team up for a little while until you get the growth and the income and the financial wherewithal to make that next move.
That's really good advice. We see that not only in the dumpster industry, but in the portable sanitation industry as well, people teaming up with each other. So I like that advice a lot. Let's talk about, now you're growing, you've got trucks, maybe you have trailers, you have tons of dumpsters, but then there's the maintenance aspect of this. So Jeff, can you tell us how should a business approach maintenance?
Well, I can only speak on what I'm doing these days. Currently all of our trucks are maintained by Kenworth, and we don't keep them long, so they're all maintained by Kenworth, but we do have some hiccups throughout, and we do have some quality mechanics that are able to service our vehicles when in need. So, developing those relationships with a good shop, when you're buying your hook lift or cable, setup. Make sure that you have local representation. And again, that goes with your truck as well, making sure you have local representation. And, you know, in our case in point, our Kenworth dealer happens to be, you know, about 8 miles away from us. So that really helps. You know, we were looking into some other trucks, but then the dealer was 20 miles away, and that didn't make sense at the end of the day, especially with their operating hours as well. Our dealer happens to have extended hours. It helps us out. We can pick up trucks at 12 midnight because they're dealing with guys from over the road. So developing that relationship, knowing who your partners will be is very important.
Out of curiosity, how long do you keep your trucks?
Usually, it's kind of crazy. We usually keep them 2 to 3 years, and we look at the mileage. We look at mileage about 40,000 miles on our smaller trucks. And then our larger Class 8 trucks, we're probably going to be pushing closer to 90,000 miles. It's just best return on investment for us. You know, we can sell them for high value, and we can get into the next newest model, and it just happens to work out really good for what we are doing. It might not be good for everyone, but it's good for us. And
sure, and I bet that makes your drivers happy too when they're driving a nice new truck every couple of years.
It does.
Bram, what about dumpster maintenance? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, on dumpster maintenance and really the back of the truck, right? As JC said, people ask us all the time, what truck should I buy? And our answer is, where's your nearest dealer service center, right? So very important on that aspect. On the back, what I would say is grease. You have working components, you have grease fittings. What we see both on the container side and the hoist side is just a negligence on maintaining those grease points, keeping everything greased. This is a harsh environment on equipment. The hydraulics, pumps, PTOs, they're pretty robust. They don't require a lot of maintenance. So when you're thinking about moving critical components, rollers, rear hinge points, things like that, those are the wear components that can end up costing you tenfold of what it would have cost to put a little grease in there, carry a battery operated grease gun in your chassis, pull it out once a week, grease all your points. You're going to save money. But PM schedule is definitely a critical part of it. In a one truck, one trailer operation, it is your lifeblood of your business, right? And if you're not paying attention to the preventive maintenance side, you'll be left stranded and your business is on hold until you can get that truck or trailer back out of the shop.
We are recording this in April of 2025, and the talk on the news these days is all about tariffs. So given the potential tariffs, the current tariffs, the future tariffs, how could changes in steel and material pricing affect the cost of purchasing dumpsters and trucks or parts? Bram, since you guys make these things, start with you.
Yeah, well, what I'll say is when the talk started, immediately the steel market reacted, right? So we have recognized about a 40% increase in steel, and I'm still trying to figure out 40% and how that equates to a 25% tariff, right? But obviously they're going to try to take advantage of it. So prices will fluctuate. Again, when you talk about the container side of the business, input costs are 50 to 60% of the product cost, steel. So as steel fluctuates, manufacturers have to move pricing up or down. Tariffs have impacted it, will continue to impact it. What we've seen here over the last week or two is a leveling out, which is good, because there probably wasn't a day we didn't get a price increase for probably 2 weeks solid, right? But now we've seen a leveling out. We actually saw a little dip about 2 days ago. That tells us hopefully it's stabilizing where it is today. And then I think as American manufacturers, steel mills, increase capacity, lower their input costs, get more efficient, which is the whole drive behind this, that we'll continue to see steel possibly slide down to pre-tariff levels.
In the interim, do you think, Bram, that it may force people to look at used versus new?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a few dynamics, right? So what we see, and JC could probably attest to this, but you're running a fleet of 20, 30 containers. They're all out. You have to have containers to grow your business, right? So the decision at that point is, where do I go? Do I go used? I would say over the last couple of years, the used market is not far from new pricing. So you're looking at the possibility of replacing a floor, replacing rails on the container, which is the most expensive maintenance on the container side. And not a lot of people look at that when they're considering used, but it does drive people to the used market. It also drives people to their boneyard. So I've set these 4 or 5 cans back. They need repairs. So now, instead of buying new, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to go hire a welder, bring them in for a period of time. I'm going to repair what I currently have before I go out and buy new. So it does affect it, but I think at the end of the day, when people need to grow their business, a $500 fluctuation on a can, that's an asset for 15 to 20 years and going to give you return quickly on your capital expense. I don't think it's that huge of obstacle. It's just a higher level entry point.
I'll tell you, currently, we look far in advance with our suppliers. And what we've done is that when we're putting in orders these days, we're having them commit and lock down prices for 6 months. So it helps us in this. We don't have the fluctuation that Bram might have, because we're able to lock in our plastics prices, and we don't use as much steel by any means as much as Bram does, but we have some products that are steel-based products. But then again, we lock in 6 months in advance. And what we've done in the past, we have not, since the beginning of RolliSkate, we have not had a price increase. And that's a tough one. And I can explain that why is because, again, we're always looking at 6 months in advance. And, we've worked very efficiently because as our customer base has grown, we're able to buy more raw good and sit on it. So we've taken whatever where a lot of people say, well, pass those costs along. But yeah, there was costs, but then we've bought way above and beyond, and we're sitting on a warehouse of product, raw good, finished good, things of this nature, that we don't want to raise our prices. And so we've just worked, we've gotten smarter machines. We've educated our staff a little bit stronger to get things done in a more efficient way.
What do you want to leave the audience with as it pertains to equipment? What should they know?
Well, again, I'll start back at having a plan and having, what is your exit strategy and getting in the right piece of equipment from the start. And as you grow, have a supplier that can grow with you. Specifically for Keystone Waste Solutions, we do manufacture trailers. And we do mount trucks through the variety of trucks all the way up to the CDL. We build a wide variety of containers. But when looking for a supplier, I think it's important to consider, are they in the market to sell you a container or a truck or whatever, or are they taking the time out to be a consultative selling approach with you to let you understand the business? Do they know the hauling side? Do they know the equipment side? And are they willing to spend the time with you to educate you, to give you other resources as other haulers that have been there, had those battles? Like JC said, he started out in a proprietary rail system, quickly learned he needed to move away from that. And we take the time up front at Keystone Waste Solutions to make sure you understand that. You understand your limited growth. If you go a certain route, you're not limited on another route. Again, there's no right and wrong. Some people love to stay in the niche market and a proprietary rail system will fit that need. But again, I just think it's important to have a business plan, to think 10 years down the road, not even next year, right? But think 10 years down the road, and then think about exit strategy. So on the exit strategy, I'll hit that real quick. But is your goal, that's passed down from generation to generation? Is your goal that you want to sell off in 10 years, right? So a lot of people don't consider that. But if I want to sell off in 10 years, I'm looking around me at who's the biggest in my area, what equipment are they running? I'm going to align directly with them because a lot of people, again, take the hook lift route and there's no hook lifts in their market, or they take the cable route. There's no cable in their market. So when they go to sell, it's really an asset sale because, there's not a lot of value to the other guy in the market that would be your potential buyer because your equipment doesn't line up, and it would complicate his business tremendously to come add those assets to his company.
I think that's great advice. Our last episode was with FMC Advisors, and Damon Powell, who specializes in helping businesses buy and sell, was talking exactly in those terms. So really neat to hear. Jeff, how about you? Parting advice.
Parting advice is property mitigation. As you service your clients don't know how harsh the equipment can do or be to your property. And it's your job as a professional is to let them know, educate them, and mitigate anything that could come back to you. That's what RolliSkate offers. It's dumpster underlayment that's been proven by pros, and we beta test it. We have several beta testers throughout the country beta testing the product. So you have no worries when you use our underlayment to protect your customer's property. And when you do that, the first thing that they'll acknowledge the customer when they come out is a smile. They'll be like, "Oh, what's that?" And then you talk to them about it, and then their worries go away. Everyone's happy, and that's what we strive for. So we want to be your partner long term, and I tell people I want to be part of your journey. So that's what we're trying to do is tell people to ditch the wood, because wood isn't designed for this industry, for as a sustainable underlayment, where our product is. And research us, learn more about us, and I think it'll benefit you, your drivers, your clients. And one of the reasons too we tell people to kind of ditch the wood is that I've seen it staged on the side of a truck in transport, and it's a liability even on the road, how some of the guys are staging this wood on the side of their truck to get it to the next job. It's a DOT concern. It's a liability.
Gentlemen, thank you both. This was a great episode, and your knowledge that you shared is going to help a lot of haulers out there. So big thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.